to spend a little time with.
Hold on one second, please. Welcome to Indigenous Ways. I'd like to acknowledge our traditional caretakers and ancestors of these lands in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the Pueblo people all around us, and also to the ancestors and caretakers of the land where all of you come from. Thank you for being here. Indigenous Ways is dedicated to bridging cultural exchange with people globally, and we are so excited to be offered Native American Heritage Month in this country to acknowledge our ancestors and all of us living and those of us unborn. So this month, we are featuring we're featuring an Indigenous person on our website to honor Native American Heritage Month. We've been posting actually 2 presenters on our Facebook page daily, and we'll continue to do this throughout November. And they have blessed us with their Indigenous wisdom and medicine through our virtual events. And real quickly, before I introduce our wonderful guest of honor tonight, see this beautiful blanket? Hold that thought. Hint, there's a different design on the other side. We're going to talk about this in a minute, and I can explain how it could be yours. So with that, with saying that, I'd like to welcome Renee Roman Nose. She is an enrolled member from the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes out of Oklahoma. Renee is many, many things and wears many, many hats like many Indigenous people do. Peripheral vision is there. She is an activist, artist, actor, comedian, motivational speaker, poet, painter, photographer, cultural anthropologist. Her book, Sweetgrass Talking, published 2017. If you haven't read it yet, get it. You can get it anywhere. Just click it, go into Amazon and you can purchase it. And we're so grateful to have Renee with us this evening to rock our moccasins back on. Thank you, Renee. Let's give it up for Renee, everybody. Woohoo!
Thank you, everyone. Pivawana, it's good to be here. I thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to spend time with us. Thank you to Indigenous Ways for your warm welcome, your kindness, and bringing me here into this format and into this moment. Thank you, Kaylee, for interpreting for us. I appreciate that very much. And I'd like to acknowledge the people from the land wherein I live at this time, the Stillaguamish, the Skykomish, the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, and the Soxswaddle. I live in the territory of those peoples. And I'm always cognizant of their kindness, of their hospitality, and of their really good food. We live here by the water, and I am blessed to have, my daughter has married into the Soxswaddle tribe. She's married to James Ironheart, and he is a good hunter. He's got a couple deer already this season, of which I was able to help harvest and clean and take care of in a good way, and also to cook and enjoy also in a very, very good way. So I'm always appreciative of those who are able to continue our traditional hunting and gathering practices. So the people here in the Northwest, they were very, very wealthy. In so many ways, they had the wealth of the land and the wealth of the sea. So I've been to events at Tulalip where they're serving up crab, and it's actually like a little hill of crab, and it's all you can eat, and it's delicious, and everyone's warm and welcoming and kind. And I'm very appreciative of the connections that I have made here, of the people that I've met here who have begun sharing their lives with me, and many of whom I've known for quite some time. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about rise and resilience. And I think I've already begun that in terms of talking about our traditional practices. And for those of you who don't know, I'm a hunter also. I inherited my hunting rifle from my mother, who was a hunter, and I haven't had any success yet, but sometime in the future, perhaps I might. I look forward to that. And I appreciate the gifts of the land and the gifts of the sea. So if anyone has questions as we're going along, please feel free to turn on your camera and wave your hand so I can see you. And I welcome your questions and your comments. And I look forward to learning with you and from you. So when we think about where we're at this moment in time, we have been here before. We have been here before many, many, too many times. Our people have been ravaged by disease since the first illegal immigrant landed on our shores from Europe. My grandfather taught me that our land is a pristine land, and there was very little disease here. We didn't have measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, smallpox, all of that. And those diseases devastated our communities and our lives. And thankfully, with the advent of vaccines, we're able to mitigate those problems now. But we sit here in a time of pandemic, and we are looking at precisely what our ancestors looked at. How do we get through these times? We get through these times by remembering our traditional practices. We get through these times by eating our traditional foods. We get through these times by continuing to practice our culture, our heritage, our spirituality, and by leaning on each other, our family, our friends. And while we may not be able to see them physically, we are able to reach out and see them on Zoom or call them via AT&T or Verizon or Walmart phone. Whatever it takes, we can reach out to one another and maintain those contacts. Facebook is an amazing platform for that. And it's really a platform where you can see things quickly. You can get snippets of people's days. Sometimes people are trying really hard to be positive, and I see that. And if you have a Facebook feed or Twitter feed or Instagram, then you'll also notice there's a lot of sadness out there right now. And we need to be uplifting one another. So this pandemic that we're living through and in the midst of, this will pass. It won't pass right away. We just don't have right now the leadership for that to have happened. But what we can do is we can help mitigate this ourselves, as we all know, practicing safe social distancing, avoiding crowds, avoiding small crowds, avoiding small groups, avoiding eating out in public. All those things, washing your hands and not touching your face and wearing a mask around everyone, those will help mitigate this. And those things are all part and parcel of things that we've learned from past pandemics, from past diseases that have come over to our country. So when we look at these diseases, I'm reminded of the words of my grandfather. Again, his words still echo in my heart, my mind. And one of the things, the teachings that he gave to me was that for every disease, there's a plant. Every disease, there is a plant. If you look at stinging nettle, there's a plant that grows right next to it that says, hey, I'm here to cure you from stinging nettle. But you got to be careful because you don't want to get stung when you're gathering it. So all those things are there right around us. And we have to continue to care for the earth that's caring for us. We are tasked with, we are blessed with the important role of being stewards of the land. And we have seen the benefits of being stewards. We know those benefits, we feel them. You see them in fire prevention practices. We see mainstream culture reaching out to us and asking, how do we prevent these major forest fires that keep coming? And so they are coming back to us. And this is part of our prophecy. This is part of the prophecy that told us that mainstream people would come to us and ask us for our help. And at that time, we were instructed to be open to that, to be welcome to that, and to be able to share that knowledge with others, not of our culture and not of our land. You know, I heard someone say that they were a native Oregonian, and to that person, it meant that he was a third generation Oregonian. But to a native person, that has a totally different meaning. We're tied to the land deeply, intrinsically. It's uh, it's a relationship that was nurtured over millennia, and how we care for the land is in subtle ways, and it is not in plowing up the land, cutting all the trees down, and then planting one crop. Monoculture, as we all know, is not healthy and is not self-sustainable. So we as Indigenous people, we have our own ways of knowing and our own ways of passing on our traditional ecological knowledge to those around us, to future generations. And it's vital that we continue to do that. This summer, I was blessed with the opportunity to go with some tribal folks and help them to gather cedar. And I had never done that before. I had never seen it. I had seen the trees that have been gathered. I've seen the effects on them, but I had never been there when the cedar was gathered before. And it was an honor and a privilege to watch this happen and to learn that you only gather from a few trees in a grove. You don't gather from all of them. You, as our traditional practices tell us, you don't be greedy. You don't take more than you need. And that's the same with our foods and the same with our environment. We have to remember all those teachings, they're all around us. And if we listen to the earth, if we listen to the birds and to the animals and the insects, we'll learn so much more knowledge than mainstream America or today's societies, modern societies, will ever understand. And that knowledge is within us. Um, Something as simple as watching the eeling ants, they call them carpenter ants. In the spring, when the eeling ants come out, then the Siletz people know that it's time to go to the rivers and gather the eels. And for those tribal people who eat those eels, I'm sure it's a yummy time. I myself, not allowed to eat snake, and they look like snakes. So anyways, all those things, there's so much knowledge around us. We live when we're in our natural world, when we're on the water, we're in the forest or on the plains, we're in the desert, we're in a library of knowledge that is so deep and so profound that it's almost overwhelming. Something as simple as leaning against a rock, and you think how that rock came to be formed, how the earth gave birth to that rock. And what does that rock do? It gives shade. It helps the earth to be stable. There's so many things and so many ways of knowing and so many ways of learning and feeling. And all of that is right outside your door. What do the winds tell you? They tell you when it's going to rain. They'll let you know. They'll speak to you. What does the air tell you? It tells you when it's going to snow. You can smell it in the air. You can feel it on your skin. You can tell the difference if you live in a cold area. You can tell the difference between the weather being above zero and below zero. I know this because I felt it and I experienced that and I learned from that. And I remember one time seeing the northern lights, and I've only ever seen them once. And at the time I was living in North Dakota, and I was lying back in the snow with one of my friends, and we were watching the lights dance in the sky. And science can explain that to you all they want. That's okay. I like to just think it's magic. It's the magic of the earth around us, reminding us to be humble, reminding us to be like a child, open and full of wonder and full of joy in that moment. There's so many moments like that. You know, when we see a family of deer and they all stop and look at us just as much as we look at them, and they're as fascinated as we are. And then they turn, they bound away, and you wonder how they can do that on those little teeny hooves. They leap about like the best ballerina in the world. So speaking of ballerinas, Maria Tallchief, she paved the way for Native American dancers. I have a little sister, Jean Ann Roman knows. Her stage name is Juanita Romano. She's an incredible dancer. So every bit of grace that our family had went into her. And, you know, I think of the Native dancers who've come before her and paved the way for her to be successful, and of the other people who paved the way for each one and every one of us, the Native scholars, all of the people who reach out to us and encourage us and admonish us. All those voices in our head, those are our ancestors speaking to us. And they say, don't go out with that boy. He's no good. No, I'm kidding. It's a girl. No. Sometimes you have to listen to those voices because they're giving you good advice. And it's important that we do that. It's vital that we do that. So rise and be resilient. As the saying goes, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it matters how many times you get back up. And if we look at our people, the people who've gone before us, we see that so very clearly. If you look at Pocahontas, who was kidnapped by the early illegal immigrants for corn, she was kidnapped, and that was after the Powhatan Confederacy had given corn to the immigrants to help them. And then the immigrants demanded more and more, and then kidnapped Pocahontas and held her hostage. And she rose. The strength of her is inspirational. There's so many of our Native people who are absolutely inspiring. So many of our Native people whose words bring us strength. The words of my grandfather, as I mentioned before, Eugene Black Bear Sr., he gifted me so many things, so much wisdom. And he told me once, he said, granddaughter, I maybe know half of what my grandparents knew. You will maybe know a quarter of what I know. What will your children know? How will your children learn our ways? And this was after a conversation wherein we discussed writing these things down. And Cheyennes, we're not supposed to write those things down, but my grandfather says to me, if we don't write them down, then my grandchildren and great grandchildren, they won't learn them, because this is how people learn now. And taking time with each other, taking time to listen, to learn, to absorb the wisdom of those around us, it's a gift. It's an amazing gift that he gave to me, and I am humbled that he spent so much time with me And I'm grateful for that. And I remember one time he was visiting me. I used to bring him out every February because he wanted to get out of Oklahoma. And I would bring him out to Oregon when I was in college and then grad school. And he would sit with me of an evening. And one time he said to me, "Granddaughter, I need a new fan handle." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't know how to do that." And he says, "That's okay. I'll teach you." And so we sat there and I was nervous and I was unsure. And he just talked me through it really gently. And um, when he passed, I didn't want to. I didn't want to go up and look at him. And I finally did. And in his hands was that fan that he had taught me how to make with the fan handle that he had guided me into creating. And he took that was buried with him. And I was reminded by looking at him that he was already gone and his spirit is already, around us, around me. And I listen to his words and his wisdom, and I'm grateful, as I mentioned, for that, for the lessons of let's make this and the lessons of write that down and understand if you don't tell people what they've done, they'll forget. And that was a really valuable lesson to me. He asked me once to write a poem about the Sand Creek Massacre, and that's what sparked that whole discussion. And as we come up on the anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, which happened this month in 1864, I'm reminded to rise. I'm reminded to be resilient. And I'm reminded that my ancestors survived the Sand Creek Massacre. And my great-great-grandmother was shot in the back of the leg, and her mother carried her through the snow in Colorado winter to safety. And if she had not done that, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. If our ancestors weren't strong, if they weren't resolved, then none of us would be here. We carry within us, science tells us, something we already know, as science does so often. It cracks me up. When I read that scientists had discovered trees could talk to each other, I was like, well, it's about time you figured that out. We've known that for a long time. Anyway, scientists tell us that they speak to each other through their roots. We knew that. But in understanding those things, in reaching out to one another, we grow. And in understanding that trauma experienced by our ancestors is embedded in our DNA, we must also remember that their strength, their courage, their resolve, their resilience is also within us, embedded in our DNA. Yes, we have that sadness, that historical sadness from generations of trauma, but we also have the humor that never lets us down. We laugh when most people might cry, and we stand up and fight when we need to, with our words, with our educations, with our law degrees. We stand up and fight for the rights of our people. We stand up and advocate in courtrooms and in Congress and in the House and to the Supreme Court for our treaty rights, for the future of our children, our grandchildren, in the 7th generation. We are here for them, not for ourselves. We are here with the voices of our ancestors in our heads and in our hearts, and they're cheering us on, and they're happy that we're here, and they love us, and they're grateful that we get up and we rise every day. Every day. What a gift that is in a time of pandemic, to remember that each and every day we can rise and be resilient. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Okay. I really am, I apologize that I couldn't get the Zoom thing and the live thing to work right away. We're just having a little bit of, I think, internet connection issue, but I'm really grateful, as I said earlier, for your time. Thank you, Kaylee, for interpreting, and thank you to my new interpreter. I don't see your name, but thank you. My hands go up to you. So I am going to tell you one more story, and I'm not sure, Tosh, how much time we have left. Okay.
Yeah, you're good for another 10, 15 minutes.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much. So underneath my name, there's a little saying right there, and I don't know if you can see it. It says, Renee Roman knows, use your story. Don't let your story use you. Each and every one of us has a story of trauma, of pain, of life. Those of us who are able to use our story, those of us who are able to rise and be resilient, can use our story to help others. I was speaking to someone earlier today about missing and murdered Indigenous women and about the Violence Against Women Act with the Native provisions. And I was talking about my own story. I am the survivor of 2 attempted rapes. The first one happened when I was in 3rd grade. And my story, I use it to remind others that I'm a survivor. My story doesn't use me. I did not turn to alcohol or anything else like that. Fortunately for me, I turned to sports. And I was a runner, and I was a power lifter, and I've been an athlete the majority of my life. And I've been a poet the majority of my life. The first hobby I ever picked up was photography. And I just love taking pictures. And now in the last few years, last 10 years, I've gotten into painting, which I didn't know I could do until I tried. So ask yourself, what is it that you don't know you could do, but you thought, I'd like to try that? Maybe it's learning a musical instrument. Maybe you want to learn to play the piano or the guitar. Maybe it's writing a cookbook. Maybe it's doing little videos on YouTube or appearing on TikTok with cranberry juice and a longboard, saying along to Fleetwood Mac. Whatever it is, find your happiness. Find what makes you feel good inside and helps you express whatever it is that might be hurting you, whatever it is that might be making you feel sad. And certainly it's easy to feel sad in these times. You know, we're all isolated. I'm fortunate that I live here with my Great Dane. She's bigger than I am, and it keeps me focused. And again, I reach out to my friends, my family, and they reach out to me. It's a two-way street. And when one or the other are feeling sad, we lift each other up. You don't have to stand up just by yourself. You can reach out and you can tell someone, I need you. I need you to listen. I need you to give me some good advice. I need you to tell me a joke. I call my brother frequently and ask him to sing to me. And he'll say, "What kind of song you want, sis?" And I'll be like, sing me a 49er, sing me a powwow song, sing me an Oklahoma two-step song. I'm really fortunate that he'll do that. He can do that. And I always walk away from those moments happier. We used to call each other every week and tell stories and tell jokes. And one week he'd tell me a joke, and the next week I'd tell him a joke, and then it'd go back and forth and back and forth. And one week I told him a joke, and the next week he told me the same joke. I was like, okay, I think we're moving on from the jokes now. We moved on to songs. And we moved on to just checking in. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? How are the kids? How are the grandkids? All those things, just those little questions that we can ask of one another, those little tendrils of love. I have a lot of people check on me, and it's kind of funny. Like, my neighbor came over the other day and we both had our masks on, and she was dropping something off for me. And as she left, she turned away and she said, "Don't forget to lock your door." And she walked away, and I closed the door and I turned the knob, and I thought, holy cow, I'm 57. I know to lock my door. And then I thought to myself, really, what she was saying was, I love you and I want you to be safe. Just a little thing. I love you and I want you to be safe. Lock your door. It wasn't, you're not smart enough to lock your door. It was, I want to say one more thing that's going to let you know I care about you. So when someone's telling you those things and you're like, how do you know that? Quit telling me this, quit telling me that. You have to remember what they're saying is, I love you. Nehoma. They're saying, I love you in whatever ways that they can. Maybe they're bringing you groceries. Maybe they're bringing you your mail. Maybe they're just calling to check on you, to make sure that you're doing okay. And that's what each and every one of us needs. We need those moments. We need those thoughts and those prayers and those good words to uplift us and strengthen us and help us get through this pandemic together. And we will get through. We're going to be okay. Reach out to each other. We're stronger together than we'll ever be alone. And we just need to remember that our sense of community is what makes us strong. Our communities are what help us to continue in the face of adversity, in the face of genocidal acts that don't seem to stop. And the whole, I'll just say it, the whole blood quantum thing that was imposed upon us by colonialists, this colonial way of thinking that we're just going to disregard the fact that we used to view people as a part of our culture. If they married in, then they were Cheyenne. If they married in, they weren't whatever they were before. They became a member of our community. And it wasn't about color or blood quantum. It was about culture. And I hope that our tribal nations across the country will look at that, or our grandchildren will not be tribal. And then where will our tribes be? The dominant culture wants our land, and blood quantum is yet another way for them to get it. So in order for us to be resilient, we have to take our sovereignty seriously, and we have to protect our children, our grandchildren, and the generations to come. We have to embed our culture within them and within their daily lives, because culture solves suicide. The community of Hiltsuck in Bella Bella, it took them 35 years, but they solved suicide. They were having almost one suicide a month. And they began with economic development, and they expanded to a youth center that was open most of the day and much of the evening. And they had culture classes, and they have language classes, and they have local universities that want to come and study their land and their animals and their fish and their waterways. And they've made agreements with those universities to come in the summer, and in exchange, they spend time with the youth, and they teach the youth how to take care of their forests and their streams, and they teach them how to do the things that they want to do to study that. So over the past 35 years, this has created generations of youth who've gone to college and come back and now are teaching their people how to do these same things, how to continue to be stewards of the land, and it has solved suicide. So if there's one thing that you remember from our talk today, it's that there is an answer. It's our culture, it's our songs, it's our regalia, it's our traditional, making traditional things and making them beautiful. It's in our songs, it's in our drumming, it's in our drum making, it's in our traditional gathering and hunting practices. It's in all those things. Our culture is within us, and it surrounds us, and well it should. That's what makes us Indigenous. That's what makes us people who are community oriented, not individually oriented, because we care about our community and care about each and every person within it. Each and every person has value, and that value isn't MAGA. It isn't that the almighty dollar. The value is, the blue corn mush your auntie makes. It's the fry bread my sister Lana makes. It's the deer that I helped harvest with my daughter and my son-in-law. It's all those moments, and it's all those times, it's all those foods. It's all that we are, and it's all that we can be. And I just so enjoy surrounding myself with people who are like-minded, with people who are focused on community and on healthy practices. And yes, we have people in our communities who aren't healthy, and we have to help them in as much as possible, but also maintaining safety for ourselves and our family members. So however that looks, you have to make those decisions. Always keep your children safe, and keep drinking people and unsafe people away from your children. I think that would have kept me safer as a child. But again, I use my story, and I don't let my story use me. And I encourage you to do the same, because I know each of you has a story, and each of you has things that hurt you. And if you like to write, I encourage you to write poetry. And I find that it's very helpful for me, especially if I've been contemplating the traumas suffered by our people. I have to then write about it. I have to put it down on paper, and that purges me from that pain, and is a release valve in many, many ways. And I find that painting is that way also. So I really want to thank Indigenous Ways for this opportunity and for this time with each and every one of you. And I want to thank our interpreters. And again, I want to thank our Native people across this continent, whose resilience has kept us here, and whose lives may not have been as abundant as our own, but they were abundant in their own way. They were abundant in love. They were abundant in um, providing food. I'm reminded of a story of uh, a woman. She had several children, and her husband um, killed someone else. And without going into too much detail, he went on the run, and I think it was actually just a fight, and it ended badly, terribly. But he once a week she would open her back door, and there would be food there. There'd be rabbits, or there'd be something else. So he would bring food, and he would keep himself away so that he wouldn't bring any more pain to his family. But he still continued to provide for them in whatever way he could. And so maybe it's not that we can provide bountifully or materialistically to our families or our homes, but love doesn't have to be materialistic. It just has to be. And that love will help us. It'll help us to rise each and every day, and it'll help us to be resilient through very difficult times, through trauma, and through joy. I was in Seattle once. Um, it was just before my wedding, and I was in a Denny's with my dear friend Judith Shapiro. And I said, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the ladies' room. So I went in the ladies' room, and there was a girl in the stall next to me just crying her heart out. And I asked her if she was okay, and she said no, and she was still crying. And I said, what happened? And she said she'd been robbed by her friend, and they'd taken everything, including her shoes. And so she just had the clothes she was in. And I asked her what shoe size she wore. And she told me, and it was the same size shoe that I was wearing. And so I slipped off my shoes, and I slid them under the door of the stall. And I said, here, take these. I don't have any cash on me, but take these shoes. And then I walked back to the table and sat down across from my friend. And she said, I thought you had shoes when you went to the bathroom. I said, oh, I have more shoes at home. And we ended up downtown by the waterfront in Seattle. And I was walking around barefoot because I didn't want to spend $30 on a pair of flip-flops when I knew I had shoes at home. So ended up going back to my up to Tulalip, and where I had shoes. And it was just a funny story. You give what you can, when you can, where you can, and that's what builds community. And it makes for a funny story. And it just reminds me that sometimes something as simple as a pair of shoes can really help somebody in a bad time.
Yeah.
Something as simple as kind words can help as well. So my relatives, continue to rise, continue to be resilient, and remember always that your ancestors are cheering you on. And they're so grateful that you're here today. And they're so grateful that we are still here. Oh.
Thank you very much, Renee. Beautiful, beautiful. Your words, your smile, your essence tonight. Strength, rising, resilience. Judy wasn't kidding when she said you were cool and you were funny. And I've heard about you for years. So thank you, Judy Shapiro, for hooking us up finally, and on what a beautiful platform to do this on. And use your story. Don't let your story use you. What a concept. That's really beautiful. Thank you very much, Renee. And I'm going to take a quick commercial break and explain what's going on with the nonprofit. And we're going to invite everybody back in to ask Renee questions, talk to her, thank her, whatever you want to do. give me just a moment to say next week we have an amazing lineup of musicians. This coming Saturday, 3:00 Mountain Standard Time. Bill Miller, can you believe that? Shelley Morningsong, Fabian Fontanelli, Wade Fernandez, Narissa Bond, IndigenousWays, to honor Native American Heritage Month. All proceeds go to our brother Bill Miller. We're lucky he's alive with us today. We're blessed with his music. So this is for Bill Miller to honor Native American Heritage Month and what he has done for us musicians in Indian world and for the Window for the World. And of course, we are going to have this gorgeous being here with us tonight, Cress, who redefines conceptual accuracy with his ASL interpretation. And also our other interpreter, Zoel, will be with us. Next Wednesday, we have our sister, one and only, Christine Bueno, and this is her sign name. She's our beautiful sister that lives in New York City. She's indigenous. She's deaf. She's proud. She's of love. She's in everything, man. She's going to be here next Wednesday and access all the way, you guys. So we'd love for you to share this recorded video with everybody. And in the next 48 hours, this will be available on our website. And you'll also be able to see the other 60 presenters and artists up to this point, including tonight, Renee. Go to right above my head. See that? Really easy. IndigenousWays.org. Cruise around that user-friendly website, very beautiful website. And while you're there, click this little button that says subscribe to our newsletter and put your name and your email address to keep up with what's going on. Right below me, you can see all of our little social media sites that you can go to. And as always, all of our virtual events have ASL interpreters, raising the bar for Indigenous access all the way around. Thank you, interpreters. We love you. We love you. We love you. And they're free. So we want to do a really quick plug for our sponsors. We would not be here without our sponsors who rose to the occasion. Thank you, National Endowment of the Arts, Westaff Cares, New Mexico Arts, New Mexico Humanities Council, and National Endowment of Humanities. And as always, we thank our IndigenousWays board members. Thank you all for being here tonight as well. Really quick, just to recap on our Navajo Nation Black Mountain Relief Run. We finished our 5th run up to Black Mountain, Oak Ridge, Kitsilele. Some food went up to Black Mountain. Lots of families got some wonderful treats 2 Fridays and Saturdays ago. It was a very successful trip, and we are honoring Native American Heritage Month, and we're doing a Black Mountain Water Project raffle. This blanket was handmade by our beautiful sister, Julie Kaufman, and their tickets are $10 each. You can get 6 tickets for $50. We're doing our drawing on December 2nd, and it all goes to the Black Mountain Water Project, this quilt raffle. So if you want to take this home, we've only had a few purchases so far, so please donate to this. Otherwise, you can go to our donate button here. You can go to our website. You can go to our physical address, and everything's pretty user-friendly. Go to hit donation and follow the links. And I'd like to invite everybody to come in at this time, and we can ask our social media participants to post their questions in our social media. We got all these windows up on this big, massive flat screen monitor over here on this side, and huge, like there's all these faces here. It's like really beautiful, this whole setup here. So post your questions, and everybody else on this end, why don't we give it up for Judy Shapiro tonight? Woo! What's up, Judy?
Oh, I don't know. You know, this is the most I've seen of Renee in what, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, 10 months.
Too many months.
Many months. It's always good to hear from Renee. My thought as you were talking about that rock, that if I were leaning on the rock, I'd be wondering who else used to lean on it. That's where I would have been with that rock. But I'd rather hear what other people have to say.
All right, let's give it up for Judy tonight. And thank you, Renee and Judy, for being friends and being a part of Indigenous Ways. We'd like to hear from Christina Bueno.
This is Christina. Yes, first of all, let me say thank you so much, Renee, for sharing your wisdom and telling us your life story. It was really, really powerful. And I was just thinking about my own life and my own recent past and just summarizing my own story. And you're right, we all have our individual struggles. And in recognizing that, we have to acknowledge that it's tough. And then living in New York, I'm here by myself, and that does make it harder. But I stay in touch with friends and I keep those relationships going. So that way I could stand in a resilient way and be very powerful in my resiliency and navigating all that. And I really appreciate your wisdom and your insights. Your life story is incredibly amazing.
Thank you, Christina.
I just don't want to cry yet.
Well, I have to tell you that
It's there. It's almost there.
I used to live in upstate New York. So I used to live up in Oneida territory. So we were quasi neighbors.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Next week we've got Christina Bueno on. She's going to be sharing a surprise with us. I don't know what she's going to talk about, but it's going to be connected to rising and resilience. So everybody come on back next Wednesday for Christina. So we're very excited. I'd like to pass the mic to Michael. Michael, would you like to say a few words this evening?
Yeah, if you can hear me. Okay. So
Yes.
I don't know if I'm an Indian, but my families have been around the country for many years, 400. We came over on the Mayflower in 1620, and I'm from Nebraska, which is a Indian word meaning flat water. And the past 40 years, I've studied history. I used to be in business, but due to my health, I needed something else to do. So the past 40 years, I've studied history, and I've walked a lot of trails, the forts, and I have met some of the best friends who were Indians, spiritual Indians from Kansas. And I've always had a big interest on how well you people took care of our earth. And I appreciate so much that you're coming out and explaining what great care you took of our country, because I spent so much time walking along the Platte Rivers and where the Indians traveled. And my great grandmother was born in Nebraska during territorial times in Nemaha County, which is Indian. A lot of the trails went through this area. And my cousin is an archaeologist who worked for Peter Kiewit Mining Engineering. And so going back to the archaeologists in Washington, D.C. would get me all the information about the early explorers. So I walked a lot of trails, and I know the roads and where the Indians, met explorers like Coronado. And I've studied all this for the past 40 years and collected. But most of my history is in the horse when it came to this country in the 1780s to race. So I behind me is 10,000 periodicals, go back to the 1830s. And of course, the Louisiana Purchase. And I've always had a special interest in American Indians. And so that's why I joined you, because I really appreciate that you're taking control, and I hope you get more seats in our Congress. And I know the last four women, I think, won the elections. So one was from Kansas, and I just enjoy listening to your stories. And I'm kind of an old man now. I don't get out much, but I still have my library, and I just love being around with you guys. So
Well,
that's my interest. Is just I hope this virus doesn't get worse, but I'm afraid it will. I've traveled to all places. I was in a World's Fair in 1962 and in Seattle. I've been one end of the country to the other. And when you said Oneida, New York, why, there was a good horse racing track there. And that's why I did. I study history and horse racing, and it's just fun because I've collected, me and my other partner, I've collected almost all the horse racing tracks in South Dakota where Standing Rock is. They were all over. The Indians had a good time with racehorses. It's interesting. Okay, I'm done. Because I could talk all day, but
Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you for being with Indigenous Ways on our virtual event site. We really appreciate you. And I just want to go over real quick to respond to Amber Garland, to Renee. This is our sister, Amber Garland. Culture as a cure for suicide. Yes. Every school I taught in, if the students had a grounding in their culture, they had resilience. Black, white, Indigenous, Chicano, Asian, they had a place where I could reach them. They had strength. That's from Amber. And then Janie Immerman, New York City. Hey, Janie, thank you for sharing your wisdom. Have a peaceful evening. Yeah, that was nice. And I'd like to pass it over to our sister Donna out of Ohio. Hey, Donna, how's it going?
All right. Hi. I'd make it try not to miss any of these. Our Indigenous Ways friends have done a fabulous job finding the greatest voices who have the most incredible things to share. And you made me think a lot tonight. Thank you so much.
Donna, you're beautiful. Thank you. I want to pass it over to Christine. Would you like to say some words, our dear sister Christine from Ohio?
Good evening. Thank you, Renee and Indigenous Ways for another just beautiful, heartful, I don't know what other word to say, evening. Every time I'm able to listen, my heart feels more full and I feel more connected. And I very much appreciate the deep sharing and the stories. It helps, it helps me to find that resilience again, especially right now when everything is so very exhausting. I'm a massage therapist, and it's not an easy time to do the work that I do. There's no way to have social distance. So each day it's a choice, and not always an easy choice to go there and be present and do what I do. So thank you for all the sharings and the stories and the reminders, because we all need to hear and be reminded of these things. And very wonderful to see everyone tonight.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much, Christine. And before we say goodnight, everybody, I just want to give Judy Shapiro another opportunity to say some words if she so feels like it. But before you say anything, and I feel like talking to you in first person and second person and third person, hey, you're here. Judy, thank you for connecting us. You've been such a wonderful gem for wonderful presenters. And Frank Edegashawik was such a journey last week to listen to. I listened to him 3 times after the show. That's how intense it was. And that's how much I took it in, and I want to hear him again. So I'm going to listen to Renee again tomorrow, just me, myself, and my cup of coffee tomorrow morning. And I'm just going to take it all in, Renee. Sister, it's good to meet you. We will be in DC potentially for the inauguration. Guess what? We got free tickets to DC and back because our trip got canceled this past year. We're a little bit paranoid, but we'll definitely run into Judy Shapiro there somehow, some way. We want to go to the inauguration. So maybe we can cross pathways that way. If not, sister, we'll see you next summer because we go up there to play music. So Judy, you are the light of our life tonight. You are rainbow colors. I see purple rays. So thank you very much, Judy. You're beautiful. I don't know if you know how beautiful you are, Judy, but you are amazing. I want you to know that, Judy. Thank you. We love you.
Tosh, I love you guys, and I feel so honored and thrilled to be able to be in this circle.
Okay, we'll talk on the phone.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, have a great night, and we will look forward to seeing you on Saturday, 3:00. Tune in, Mountain Standard Time. Bill Miller and friends. Yeah. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, interpreters. Thank you all. Hi, Mom. Hi, Harry. Love you. Bye. Let's give it up for everybody.
Yeah.
Renee, 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 Renee.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful